Good evening, colleagues. Sorry for the late start, but we tried to get as much substantive conclusions this evening, and for that reason we are late. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I declare open the third meeting of the Subsidiary Body for Scientific and Technology Advice at its 61st session.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening. I declare open the third meeting of the Subsidiary Body on Implementation at its 61st session. The plenary meetings will be conducted as follows. We will begin with SubSTA taking up sub-item 2B to elect SubSTA Vice Chair. Then we will consider and adopt results from the work under the SBI only items. The SubSTA and the SBI will then consider and adopt the results from work under the joint SubSTA SBI items. Subsequently, SubSTA will consider and adopt the results from work under the SubSTA only items. The order of the agenda items taken up is projected on the screen. Finally, we take up our respective items on closure of and report on the session, which are SBI agenda item 22 and SubSTA agenda item 17. And we will proceed with the closure of our respective sessions. We will then convene a joint plenary to hear statements for groups, individual parties, and NGO constituencies. Delegates, due to the late hour, we kindly request parties to deliver their statements during the plenary session scheduled for Monday, 18 November, when we will report to the governing bodies on the outcomes of our work under the SBs. We would like to remind the parties of the possibility of submitting statements ahead of meetings via email to the conference officers to facilitate the provision and quality of interpretation and maintain useful records. We would also like to recall that, as previously communicated to parties, there are some cases where parties agreed on conclusions that are of very simple procedural nature and for which no L documents need to be prepared. Those proposed conclusions are available on the session web pages under the relevant items. In these cases, the SubSTA Chair and I will instead read out such conclusions under each item, and we turn to them during this meeting for your consideration. Once adopted, the conclusions will be reflected, as usual, in the report of the respective sessions. Please note that, as informed to the Bureau at its meeting on 14 November, some of the conclusions presented for adoption today may not be available in all UN languages, since they were only finalized late last night or in the course of the day today. The Secretariat editors and the UN translation services are doing their utmost to process all documents expeditiously and make versions in all UN languages available on the UNFCCC website as soon as possible. We thank parties for their understanding. After we have taken up all SB agenda items, the Secretariat will inform of the budgetary and administrative implications of the conclusions which will have been adopted today. Can we take it that the parties agree to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Let us briefly turn to SBI item 2, organizational matters, 2B, election of officers other than the chair. You will recall that at our opening session, I informed parties that consultations or nominations for SBI rapporteur were undertaken during this session. The Secretariat has not received any nominations at this stage. Therefore, in accordance with Rule 22, Paragraph 2, in conjunction with Rule 27 of the draft Rules of Procedure being applied, the rapporteur, Aysen Turpanci, remains in office until her successor is elected at the next session. I thank Aysen for her support.
Delegate, let us first turn to SubSTA agenda sub-item 2B, election of officers others than the chair. I am pleased to inform you that we received the nomination of Natalie Flores Gonzalez from the Dominican Republic for re-election as Vice Chair. I hereby propose that the SBSTA elects Natalie Flores Gonzalez as Vice Chair. I hear no objections. It is so decided. I congratulate Natalie Flores on her re-election as Vice Chair and wish you the very best, Natalie. You also will recall that at our opening session, I informed parties that consultation and nomination for the SBSTA rapporteur were undertaken during this session. The Secretariat has not received any nominations on this stage. Therefore, in accordance with Rule 22, paragraph 2 of the draft Rules of Procedures being applied, the rapporteur, Zita Kasha-Wells, remains in office until her successor is elected at the next session. I thank Zita for her continued support in the SBSTA Bureau.
As mentioned at the outset, we now turn to the SBI to take up the items that are exclusively on SBI agenda. I invite parties to turn to SBI Agenda Item 3, reporting from and review of parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. In our opening plenary, I proposed informal consultations on the three sub-items co-facilitated by Toby Hager from the United States of America and Tian Wang from China. I thank Toby and Tian for their work. For Agenda Sub-Item 3A, status of submission and review of national communications and biannual reports from parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Based on agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose that to the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI considered the note by the Secretariat on the status of submission and review of national communications and biannual reports contained in document SBI/2024/INF.10 and took note of the information therein. Can I take it that SBI adopts these conclusions? Having no objections, it is so decided. Agenda Item 3B, compilations and synthesis of biannual reports from parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Based on agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose to the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI considered the compilation and synthesis of the 5th biennial reports of parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention contained in document SBI/2023/INF.1. The SBI agreed to continue consideration of this matter at SBI 62, June 2025. And I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions. Having no objections, it is so decided. Sub-item 3C, report on national greenhouse gas inventory data from parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Based on agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose to the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI considered the reports prepared by the Secretariat on national greenhouse gas inventory data for 1990 to 2021 and for 1990 to 2022, contained in documents SBI/2023/15 and SBI/2024/17, respectively. The SBI agreed to continue consideration of this matter at SBI 62, June 2025. Can I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Next, I invite delegates to turn to SBI Agenda Item 4, reporting from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. 4A, information contained in national communications from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. I thank Masumi Desai of the United States of America and Marcelo Roja from Brazil for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. Based on agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose to the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI engaged in constructive discussions on information contained in national communications from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. The SBI agreed to continue consideration of this matter at SBI 62, June 2025. Can I take it that SBI adopts these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Sub-item 4B, provision of financial and technical support. I thank Julia Gardner from Australia and Sandra Mochonedi from South Africa for their work in co-facilitating informal consultations convened on this item. The co-facilitators have informed me that the parties have considered this matter, but they could not conclude the consideration at this session. The item will therefore be included in the provisional agenda of the next session in accordance with Rules 10C and 16 of the draft Rules of Procedure. Turning to sub-item 4C, summary reports on the technical analysis of biennial update reports of parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. I thank Masumi Desai and Marcelo Roja for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. Based on an agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose to the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI considered the published summary reports from the technical analysis of biennial update reports of parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention, available on the UNFCCC website, and took note of 180 technical analysis summary reports that were published by September 3rd, 2024. The SBI engaged in constructive discussion on the technical analysis summary reports and noted the importance of the information contained therein. Can I take it that the SBI adopt these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Sub-item 4D, report of the consultative group of experts. I thank Masumi Desai and Xiang Gao from China for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. I invite delegates to consider draft conclusions contained in document SBI/2024/L16. Can I take it that the SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I now invite parties to turn to SBI agenda item 5, matters relating to global stocktake. Item 5B, modalities of the United Arab Emirates dialogue on implementing the global stocktake outcomes referred to in paragraph 97 of Decision 1 CMA 5. I thank Ricardo Marshall from Barbados and Patrick Spicer from Canada for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. Based on agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose to the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI agreed to forward this matter to the CMA for consideration at its sixth session under agenda item 11J on the basis of the informal note prepared by the co-facilitators for this agenda item at this session. The SBI recognized that this informal note includes divergent views on modalities, has not agreed upon, does not reflect consensus, is not exhaustive, has no formal status, and is open to revision and does not prejudge further work to prevent parties from expressing any further views. Can I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions? Hearing no objection, it is so decided. Moving on to SBI agenda item 11, matters relating to adaptation. Sub-item 11D, national adaptation plans. I thank Antwi Basiko Amoa of Ghana and Meredith Ryder Rood from the United States of America for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. Sorry, EU has requested for the floor. EU, please go.
Thank you, Chair. This is for the previous item, SBI 5B, on the modalities of the UAE dialogue. The world expects COP29 to deliver on how we are making progress collectively and individually to implement the UAE consensus and all actionable calls in the GST decision. The EU had hoped to advance further on the modalities of the UAE dialogue, but appreciates the work done on this item with all parties and under the able guidance of the SB chairs and the co-facilitators. As we expressed at many previous occasions, we would like to see a follow-up on all elements included in the GST decision, while having flexibility on where this takes place. All actionable calls in the GST decision, be it on adaptation, mitigation, and energy transition or finance, need to get an operational follow-up. We stand ready to continue to work with all parties to operationalize the UAE dialogue here in Baku, designing a dialogue that both enhances ambition and enables action, and that demonstrates that we deliver on what we agreed under the Paris Agreement, keeping 1.5 degrees within reach. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Samoa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm taking the floor on behalf of AOSIS to express our concern with progress during this session. Parties have been working hard this week on the very broad agenda we have to deliver at this COP. We know that progress has been very slow and incremental, but we have faith that we will get there. I feel the need to underscore a few facts to inform our discussions going forward, in particular as it relates to how we progressed the important agreement made last year, in particular to the context of the GST. From 2011 to 2022, the population affected by disasters in SIDS increased by around 120%, and deaths per million rose by about 60%. Climate change is placing the lives and livelihoods of our people at risk. This risk is escalating with each advancing year. The science has told us that we need to do in order to be able to turn the tide. In order to ensure that the most vulnerable are not left behind, in the GST, parties agreed on measures that we would undertake collectively to move us closer to our stated objectives. Mr. Chair, it seems as though for COP29, many parties would like for us to conveniently forget what we agreed, or at the very least to put it on hold indefinitely. In the meantime, climate change impacts continue to escalate and loss and damage rages on in SIDS. I want to make it clear that for SIDS, we cannot consider this COP a success if there is no opportunity to advance on what we have agreed last year in the GST. Efforts to this are being blocked across agenda items. We are being invited to engage in a collective amnesia when what we need at this time is strengthened individual and collective action. We would urge you and other presiding officers to provide us with guidance on how we proceed from here. We are surprised and disappointed by the situation that has unfolded thus far, and we hope that we'll be able to find common ground and move forward respecting the agreements we have made and working towards the implementation of the agreements that we have already reached. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Samoa. Let me revert to sub-item 11D, National Adaptation Plans. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions contained in document SBI/2024/L18. May I take it that SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Having no objections, it is so decided. I now invite delegates to turn to SBI Agenda Item 12, matters relating to the least developed countries. I thank Ibrahim Shatima from Zambia and Rick den Hout from the Netherlands for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SBI/2024/L17/add 1. I see Malawi on behalf of LDCs. Do you want to take the floor before the adoption? Please go ahead.
After the adoption, Chair. Thank you. After the adoption, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. So can I take it that the SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Having no objections, it is so decided. Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you also to all colleagues. I want to, on behalf of the Least Developed Countries Group, as the chair, thank again the co-facilitators that facilitated this particular agenda item, matters related to LDCs, for the work they did until late this afternoon when we agreed on the text. And also want to thank all the parties that supported us. I was in the room this afternoon, and I want to once again offer a word of appreciation for the collaboration and support on this particular agenda item. As you may know, the matters related to LDCs is an agenda item that is at the center of the LDCs, and therefore, once again, I just want to thank everyone for supporting this particular agenda item as we agreed on the text this afternoon. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Malawi. I now invite parties to turn to SBI Agenda Item 14, matters relating to technology transfer and development. Sub-item 14B, linkages between technology mechanism and the financial mechanism. I thank Akterine Mikadze from Georgia and Stefan Menas from Greece for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. Based on the agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose that the SBI to continue consideration at SBI 62, June 2025. Can I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to sub-item 14C, Poznan's Strategic Program on Technology Transfer. I thank Duduzili Nlen Messina from Eswatini and Stig Sweningsson from Norway for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. I see Malawi has asked for the floor again. Please go ahead, Malawi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Once again, I want to intervene on the previous agenda item on technology development and transfer. Chair, just to express our concern and regret that there was no progress made on the agenda item related to the linkages between technology transfer and the financial mechanism. Also related to the joint annual report, we wish to express our dissatisfaction with our co-facilitators' in the way they handled the matter and the way they came up with a final decision on this agenda item. As a group, we are not very happy because we expressed in the rooms that the approach used was not to the advantage of the group of the LDCs. We would therefore not fully support the draft decision that has been submitted by the co-facilitators to you, chairs, on this matter. So we do not support the submission that has come to you, Chair.
Thank you, Malawi. Let's move to item 5C, Poznan Strategic Program on Technology Transfer. I thank Duduzile Nlen Messina from Eswatini and Stig Sweningsson from Norway for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. I think Malawi wants the floor again. Please go ahead.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. I would need to hear from you, Chair, on your response to what I've presented, how the agenda item then will proceed on technology. If I may get a response or guidance on how we will proceed with that, because we do not support the text that has come to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Malawi. So just to clarify that we are on item 14B, linkages between technology mechanism and the financial mechanism. And what we proposed was that based on the agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose the SBI to continue consideration at SBI 62, June 2025. So are you objecting to this? It is just to continue consideration at the next session. Yes, Malawi, please go ahead.
Yes, Chair. As I said, it is the way the co-facilitators came to that conclusion. My coordinators informed me that that was not agreed upon by consensus. So my group was not happy with the approach the co-facilitators used. Maybe I can consult again, but so the way that was reached was not to the did not receive the support of everyone in the rooms. So the way it was transferred to SB 62 next year wasn't fully supported by everyone. Otherwise, it should have been concluded here at SB 61. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malawi. So we have taken note, and if I would request you to consult as well, and we will come back to this item at the end again. So returning to 14C, as recalled at the opening plenary, 14C is Poznan's strategic program on technology transfer. As recalled at the opening plenary, the SBI was also mandated to take into account the technology implementation program in its consideration of the Poznan strategic program. With regard to the PSP, parties agreed to the following conclusions. The SBI agreed to forward this matter to the Conference of the Parties at its 29th session for further guidance on this basis of the draft text on the Poznan strategic program prepared by the co-facilitators for this agenda item. The draft text refers to the most recent draft text available on the SBI 61 session webpage under agenda item 14C. Can I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions? Having no objections, it is so decided. With regard to the TIP, the following conclusions are proposed. The SBI discussed the technology implementation program in its consideration of the Poznan strategic program on technology transfer pursuant to decision 1/CMA 5, paragraph 110. The SBI could not reach conclusion and agreed to forward this matter to the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement at its 6th session. Can I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I now invite parties to turn to agenda item 15, matters relating to finance. 15B, second review of the functions of the Standing Committee on Finance. I thank Clara Schulz from Sweden and Ali Waqas from Pakistan for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. Based on the agreement among the parties at these consultations, I propose the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI considered the matter of the second review of the functions of the Standing Committee on Finance. The SBI agreed to continue consideration of this matter at SBI 63. Can I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions? Having no objections, it is so decided. Next, SBI agenda item 16, matters relating to capacity building. I thank Cristina Carreras from the European Union and Natalie Flores Gonzalez from the Dominican Republic for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SBI/2024/L12, recommending a draft decision to CMA 6, and SBI/2024/L13, recommending a draft decision to COP29. Can I take it that the SBI recommends the draft COP decision for consideration and adoption by the COP as presented, and it recommends the draft CMA decision for consideration and adoption by the CMA as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to SBI Agenda Item 17, Gender and Climate Change. I thank Marc-André Lafrance from Canada and Ruleta Thomas from Antigua and Barbuda for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. Based on the agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose to the SBI the following conclusions. The SBI agreed to forward the matter to the COP for consideration at its 29th session on the basis of the draft text prepared by the co-facilitators for this agenda item at this session. The draft text refers to the most recent draft text available on the SBI 61 session webpage under item 17. Can I take it that the SBI adopts these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Moving on to SBI agenda item 18, matters relating to action for climate empowerment. I thank Natalie Flores Gonzalez from the Dominican Republic and Arne Reidel from Germany for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. I see European Union. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for SBI 17, Gender and Climate Change. This week, we have seen intense negotiations on the new work on gender and climate change to follow up the Enhanced Lima Work Programme and its action plan. We have to use this opportunity to ensure a continuation of work during this critical decade with increased ambition, ensuring the empowerment of women and girls in all their diversity as agents of change. Women and girls are already suffering the disproportionate impacts of climate change, impacting their lives and fundamental rights all over the world. To emphasize this urgency and the need to address it, we have launched a statement at the beginning of COP with international partners, and we will continue to work together for an ambitious outcome. However, we are concerned about the attempts to backslide from agreed language from 10 years ago, the lack of progress on text, and the process going forward. We expect the work to continue next week and ask for sufficient time to agree on this important work program, as gender equality is a cornerstone for enhanced ambition. I thank you, Chair.
I thank the European Union. Returning to agenda item 18, matters relating to action for climate empowerment. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SBI/2024/L14. May I take it that the SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to SBI agenda item 19, reporting and review pursuant to Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, provision of financial and technical support to developing country parties for reporting and capacity building. I thank Julia Gardiner and Sandra Machuanedi for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item, which was referred to by the SBI by the CMA under its item 8 at its opening plenary. The co-facilitators have informed me that the parties have considered this matter, but that they could not conclude their consideration at this session. The matter will be referred back to CMA at its 66th session for further guidance. Can I take it that the SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Moving on to SBI item 20, it's administrative, financial, and institutional matters. I thank Zita Wilkes from Gabon and Lenek Eichendron from the Netherlands for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations which were convened on this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft COP decision contained in document SBI/2024/L11 and the draft CMB decision contained in document FCC/SBI/2024/L10. Can I take it that the SBI recommends the draft COP decision for consideration and adoption by the COP as presented, and it recommends the draft CMP decision for consideration and adoption by the CMP as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Dear delegate, we will now turn to adopting results of the work under the joint items of the two subsidiary body agendas. For our first joint item, we invite the parties to turn to SubSTA agenda item 3 and SBI agenda item 5, matters related to the global stocktake, procedural and logistical elements of the overall global stocktake process. We thank Taria Al-Ali from the United Arab Emirates and Patrick Spicer from Canada for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. Based on agreement by parties at these consultations, I propose that the SubSTA the following conclusions. The subsidiary bodies agreed to forward these matters to the CMA for consideration at its sixth session under agenda item 4A on the basis of the draft text prepared by the co-facilitators for this agenda item at this session. The SB recognized that this draft text includes divergent views, has not been agreed upon, does not reflect consensus, is not exhaustive, has no formal status, and is open to revision. And it does not prejudge further work or prevent parties from expressing any further views. Can I take it that the SubSTA agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Can I take it that the SBI agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. We now invite parties to SubSTA agenda item 5A and SBI agenda item 11A, matters relating to the global goal on adaptation. We thank Tina Kobilesk of Slovenia and Lamine Diba from Gambia for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. We invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SB/2024/L12. Can I take it that the SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Can I take it that the SubSTA adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. We invite parties to turn now to SubSTA agenda item 5B and SBI agenda item 11B, report of the Adaptation Committee. We thank Geert Vermont from Belgium and Nina Yassim from Sudan for co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions contained in document SB/2024/L9. Can I take it that the SubSTA adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Can I take it that the SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Now I invite parties to turn to SubSTA agenda item 5C and SBI agenda item 11C, review of the progress, effectiveness, and performance of the Adaptation Committee. We thank Geert Fremhout and Lina Yassin for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. Based on agreement by parties at these consultations, I propose to the SBI the following conclusions. The Substar and the SBI agreed to continue consideration of the review of the progress, effectiveness, and performance of the Adaptation Committee at their 62nd session, June 2025. Can I take it that the SBI agrees to these conclusions? Having no objections, it is so decided.
Can I take it that the Substar agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. We now invite parties to turn to Substar Agenda Sub-Item 6A and SBI Agenda Sub-Item 13A. Joint Annual Report of the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage associated with climate change impact and the Santiago Network for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage associated. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. To the previous item, Substar Agenda Item 5C and SBI Agenda Item 11C. The EU and its 27 member states are very disappointed that it was not possible to engage constructively on reviewing the progress, effectiveness, and performance of the Adaptation Committee. This is the fourth year in a row that we have not made progress on this item. The Adaptation Committee is the overall advisory body on adaptation under the Convention and the Paris Agreement. We value its role. We encourage all groups and parties to engage in the substance of the review of the progress, effectiveness, and performance of the Adaptation Committee as it relates to work undertaken under the Convention and the Paris Agreement at SB62. I thank you.
Thank you, EU. Let us now return to Substar Agenda Item Sub-Item 6A and SBI Agenda Sub-Item 13A, the Joint Annual Report of the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage associated with climate change impact and the Santiago Network for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage associated with the adverse impact on climate change. We thank Pasha Gutierrez from Cook Islands and Farhan Akhtar from the United States of America for their work in co-chairing the contact group convened on this item. The co-chairs have informed me that the parties have considered this matter, but that they could not conclude their consideration at this session. The item will therefore be included in the provisional agenda for the next session in accordance with Rules 10C and 16 of the Draft Rules of Procedures.
Similarly, the item will be included in the provisional agenda of the next SBI session in accordance with the Rule 10C and 16 of the Draft Rules of Procedure. We now invite parties to turn to Substar Agenda Item 6B and SBI Agenda Item 13B. 2024 review of the Warsaw International Mechanism and loss and damage associated with climate change impacts. We thank Farhan Akhtar and Pasha Karutas for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. The co-facilitators have informed me that the parties have considered this matter, but they could not conclude the consideration of this session, at this session. The item will therefore be included in the provisional agenda of the next session in accordance with Rule 10C and 16 of the Draft Rules of Procedure.
Similarly, this item will be included in the provisional agenda for the next Substar session in accordance with Rules 10C and 16 of the Draft Rules of Procedure. We now invite parties to turn to Substar Agenda Item 7 and SBI Agenda Item 7.2, Sharm el-Sheikh Mitigation Ambition and Implementation Work Programme. We thank Ursula Fuentes from Germany and Marcela John Kekana from South Africa for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. The co-facilitators have informed me that parties have considered this matter, but that they could not conclude their consideration at this session. The item will therefore be included in a provisional agenda for the next session in accordance with Rule 10C and 16 of the draft rules of procedures.
Similarly, this item, UAE, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairs. It's actually the United Kingdom. The Mitigation Work Programme Room had a slow start this week. We think parties have been engaged constructively in sharing views and making some progress as the week progressed. The room only closed a few hours ago, and the conclusion at that point was unclear. Though we note you are suggesting that Rule 16 will be applied, we believe Rule 16 does not represent the discussions on this agenda item to date, nor the progress made this week. We would instead propose that this item should be forwarded to the CMA with the following procedural conclusions. The SubSTA and the SBI did not conclude their consideration of matters related to the Sharm el-Sheikh Mitigation Ambition and Implementation Programme. The SubSTA and the SBI agreed to forward this matter to the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement at its 6th session for further guidance.
Thank you. We have a few speakers on the list, so we will take those speakers on the list, and then we will put this proposal to the plenary. Peru.
Thank you, Chair. The Mitigation Work Programme is the only space we have to specifically address mitigation. In light of the alarming findings of the most recent scientific reports, coupled with record-breaking temperatures and extreme hydroclimatic events devastating our territories, it is deeply troubling to witness the current state of negotiations in this room. Under the Mitigation Work Programme, the co-facilitators, acting within their authority and mandate, presented a robust and inclusive informal note that reflects the view of all parties. The informal note highlighted critical message of the essential role of public finance, international cooperation, access to funding, and addressing the cost of capital, all urgent priorities for developing countries. It also includes vital calls for action, enhanced ambition, and accelerated implementation, exactly what the world desperately needs. Yet, discussions on mitigation are being deliberatively obstructed, while developing countries continue to shoulder the overwhelming burden of addressing loss and damage. The IPCC has made it unequivocally clear we have already exceeded the limits of adaptation. Without an immediate and significant scaling up ambition and implementation during this critical decade, there will be no resource available to effectively address loss and damage. No progress has been achieved. A program that was born with great hope in Glasgow has been stripped of its potential to drive meaningful, real-world change. A group of parties continues trying to block consensus and refuse to allow the views of other parties to be reflected in the process. We remind all parties that paragraph 2 of Decision 4 CMA ensures that this process does not impose obligations on any party. Reaching an agreement that includes substantive elements in this decision is essential to create the momentum needed to enhance ambition and implementation in mitigation during this decade. In light of this state, we need, at the very minimum, a procedural conclusion that reflects the fact that we agree there is no agreement so far, and we will continue working on this next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. Japan?
Thank you, Chair. We try to align with the statement previous made by UK, and we are deeply concerned about the lack of progress under the Sharm el-Sheikh mitigation work program. Accelerating global mitigation ambition and implementation is a priority for Japan. A substantive outcome that integrates GST outcomes into the program and includes the findings from the global dialogue is necessary for the success of CMA6. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. Canada?
Thank you, Chair. Addressing mitigation is fundamental to keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. As others have noticed, there has been engagement by many parties in the room this week on this item, and we don't think that Rule 16 reflects the nature of that engagement. We are keen to continue engagement under the CMA to enable further consideration, and so we urge parties to adopt procedural conclusions. We support the text proposed by the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Australia?
Thank you, Chairs, and apologies for my voice. I'll be brief. But look, we think this is an unacceptable outcome. In 2021, we collectively agreed to a work program on mitigation, ambition and implementation. And at every meeting since then, it's been blocked. And today it's stooped to a new low with a proposed Rule 16. We've got a group of parties who won't even permit a procedural acknowledgement that a discussion has taken place. It's reasonable for countries to express different views on issues as according to their national circumstances. But this isn't reasonable, it's entirely unreasonable. So we support the UK's proposal that this item should be forwarded to the CMA with procedural conclusions and with the text proposed by the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. Samoa?
Thank you, Chair. Samoa speaking on behalf of AOSIS. AOSIS also believes that the mitigation work program can be further discussed, and we also believe that the procedural conclusions would be the best approach going forward in line with the proposals by the UK and others. We need to be able to see an outcome on mitigation at this COP, otherwise we cannot leave Baku saying that it was a success. We desperately need to do better here in Baku, and we need more transparency and due process in our work. And crucially, we need a decision of substance on the mitigation work program here, a decision that showcases solutions from our global dialogues and our investment-focused events, that integrates our outcomes from the first global stocktake and that talks to our NDCs. I thank you.
Thank you, Samoa. New Zealand?
Thank you, Chair. The mitigation work program is the single space within our process that directly addresses mitigation. We're concerned with the progress on this item, on mitigation, and on following up on the outcomes of last year's historic global stocktake outcome. Like others have said, parties have been engaged constructively in sharing views and making progress on this item. The proposed conclusion was unclear at the point the room closed, and like the UK and others, we believe that the proposed application of Rule 16 does not represent the progress made this week and does not support urgent action in this critical decade, the purpose of this work program. As such, we also support this matter being forwarded to the CMA and the text proposed by the United Kingdom.
Thank you. New Zealand, Norway.
Thank you. We would underline that the Sharm el-Sheikh Mitigation, Ambition and Implementation Work Programme is already on the agenda of the CMA 6. It's agenda point 6. We would expect more than silence, and the world would expect more than silence on mitigation coming from this COP. And the least we can do is secure an orderly transition from the SBs to the CMA. And the proposal of UK would serve to do this, and we therefore support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Kenya?
Thank you, Chair. Kenya speaks on behalf of the African Group. We extend our sincere gratitude to the chairs and the co-facilitators for the commitment and the hard work, and assure you of our continued positive engagement as we navigate these critical discussions. For Africa, the success of Baku conference transcends the adoption of agreed texts. It must manifest as a tangible improvement in the lives of our people who bear the brunt of climate impacts, and foster a world where transition delivers shared prosperity. Regrettably, it appears that COP29 is not yet charting that course. The Africa Group would like to raise a concern on the agenda item on mitigation work program. Whilst we engaged constructively to find a landing ground, there was no convergence on the understanding of the mandate and scope of the MWP. The Africa Group will not accept multiple elements of a top-down and prescriptive nature, which we are concerned will make it very difficult for Africa to move forward on the matter. We would like to reiterate that the existing modalities of the global dialogue and investment forums have been invaluable for Africa, and we can do with some enhancements and improvements. We think that it is not right to use mitigation work program as a placeholder for policy messages and GST elements. We stress that its purpose of MWP is to create an enabling environment for ambitious action. Efforts to transform MWP into a platform for setting targets contradicts the principles of national determination that underpin mitigation actions. The Africa Group nonetheless remains open to constructively engage on this matter. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Kenya, on behalf of the African Group of Negotiators, and Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We make our statement on behalf of the EIG. We share the sentiment and views expressed by the previous speakers from UK, Peru on behalf of ILAC, Japan, Canada, Australia, Samoa on behalf of IOSIS, New Zealand and Norway. We are disappointed to see the mitigation work programme once again be held up by a select few. The presented note by the co-facilitator expressed the different views on the issue and contain recommendations and best practices on cities building urban systems. This is a critical commitment for the next round of NDCs and a signal that this COP needs to send. We support forwarding procedural conclusions on this agenda item with a view to continuing our deliberations on it next week, as it was proposed by the UK. Thank you.
Thank you. Switzerland on behalf of EIG. Bolivia.
Bolivia is speaking on behalf of the LMDC. Chairs, we tried really hard for an outcome, but it is unfortunate that we couldn't find agreement among us. Rule 16 should be applied. No proposal must be displayed on the screen. We are deeply disappointed that we have been termed blockers in the mitigation room. This is deeply disrespectful, untrue, and not in good faith. The fact is the views expressed by our partners are so far out of the mandate that it became difficult to find even a common starting point. allow us to restate the mandate of the mitigation work program. The mitigation work program is to ensure a facilitative, non-punitive, non-prescriptive outcome and approach, respect national sovereignty and circumstances, and the nationally determined nature of NDCs. Ensure that no new targets or goals would be imposed. Instead, we heard of targets and outlandish proposals when really there has been no progress on finance. There is still only a zero in the NCQG discussions. No number, no ambition. The ambition support linkage must not be forgotten. Let us remember that this is a finance COP, and we expect developed countries to deliver. There is a huge mitigation gap, and it is indeed a critical decade. The reason the decade has become critical is largely because of the inadequate action and unfulfilled promises by developed countries. Mitigation action by developed countries has not been forthcoming, even though the Convention and its Paris Agreement make it clear that the developed countries must take the lead on mitigation. What is forgotten, perhaps conveniently, is that developed countries have failed to achieve the IPCC recommended target of 25–40% emission reduction by 2020 over 1990 levels. Several of them have left the Kyoto Protocol, leaving a gaping hole in mitigation action. Further, the projected total GHG emissions of Annex I parties in 2030 are expected to be 0.5% higher than in 2020. I repeat, higher. Developed countries are talking about reaching 1.5 degrees, while their actions and plans back home reveal the opposite. They have overused the carbon budget, and it seems that they don't want to leave any for developing countries. We have conveyed during the opening that we must stick by what we have agreed to, not depart from principles and provisions of the Convention and its Paris Agreement. Chairs, this is a stadium, but we must put an end to the games being played here. It is time to get serious. We urge our partners to stop trying to push the mitigation burden on developing countries. Show leadership, pave the way for us. This is a legal obligation. Bring back the good faith. We thank you.
Thank you, Bolivia. On behalf of LMDC, United States.
Thank you, Chair. We're at yet another closing plenary of the subsidiary bodies without an outcome on the mitigation work program. We're deeply disappointed about the pace and status of discussions on this item, and that several parties prevented forwarding a simple compilation of views. We need an outcome here at COP29 that reaffirms and strengthens the historic global stocktake decision and integrates its work into this work program. We will continue to pursue this matter under the CMA. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. In similar view as many other delegations intervened, we support the UK proposal. We believe that discussions during this session, even though they were not easy, deserve to be recognized through procedural conclusion. I thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Malawi.
Thank you, Chair. Just like others also have said, want to, of course, thank the co-facilitators for the work done. However, we also are concerned that we do not make progress. The mitigation work program, which was established to accelerate emission reductions and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, is crucial and still remains under debate, with insufficient advancement on concrete implementation strategies. We cannot afford to allow political inertia in this matter to undermine our collective goal of preventing catastrophic climate impacts. We have witnessed some delays, even diluted commitments and reluctance to adopt the necessary transformative measures here in Baku. I just want to highlight, Chair, that for the least developed countries group, I'm speaking on behalf of the LDCs, as you may recall. These delays translate into real and devastating consequences, such as loss of lives in our communities, destruction of livelihoods, and irreversible damage to our ecosystems and heritage. It is our hope that we keep science alive in all of our discussions here in Baku, and for a clear pathway in the mitigation work program and other related science agenda items. Chair, when the world is experiencing record-breaking temperatures and devastating climate impacts, we cannot allow again another Rule 16 to be applied on this agenda item. We want to recommend as a group that we take this discussion further through the CMA next week when we reconvene. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malawi. Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia speaking on behalf of the Arab Group. Distinguished colleagues, we align our statement with the statement made by the LMDC and the AGN. We have come to this discussion with a genuine desire to reach a decision on the mitigation work program. We have been working diligently within the agreed mandate, a mandate that reflects our shared understanding. Yet, despite this, we see attempt to condition progress. Some are holding agreed element hostage to push for additional outcomes that stretch far beyond the mandate we collectively approved. This approach risks undermining not only the progress we have made, but also the trust in this process. Let us remind ourselves of what we have agreed to. The mitigation work program mandate is clear. It ensures a facilitative, non-punitive, and non-prescriptive outcomes and an approach. It respects national sovereignty and circumstances and the nationally determined nature of our indices. And it ensures that no new targets or goals would be imposed. These principles are not just words. They are the foundation of this program. They ensure fairness, equity, and respect for the diversity of pathways that each party must navigate. Despite these clear guidelines, we now face efforts to undermine the essence of this process. Some are attempting to turn a facilitative, bottom-up approach into a prescriptive, top-down one. They are eroding the flexibility that developing countries depend on, fragmenting mitigation from the critical means of implementation, and sidelining the foundational principles of equity, common but differentiated responsibility, and the nationally determined nature of our contributions. The mandate is not a suggestion, nor it's open for reinterpretation to serve narrow interests. Progress must be on the right track, aligned with the principles agreed to, and respectful of the diverse realities of our parties. Anything else that risks unraveling the very process we are here to strengthen. We are deeply disappointed that some parties seem intent on steering us off a track. This is not cooperative, respectful dialogue we signed up for, and it's not the basis for the trust and unity we need to succeed on. And as a result, parties simply did not agree. We call on all parties to respect the mandate, honor our agreement, and work constructively towards a meaningful outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. On behalf of the Arab Group, Colombia.
Thank you, Chair, for giving us the floor. Colombia aligns herself with the statement made earlier by Peru on behalf of ILAC. Dear Chair, distinguished delegates, as the motto for this COP, Colombia stands in solidarity for a green world. To achieve this vision, we need to build upon previous consensus, leadership, and political momentum to scale up implementation based on the provision of finance and other means of implementation. We know this is a delicate balance, but it is feasible with your wisdom, guidance, and our collective collaboration. Let's give no reasons to those who are against the multilateral system. Dear colleagues and members of the international community, before reflecting on the progress made during this week's agenda, we would like to raise our voices for urgency. Time is running out. Natural disasters due to climate variability are becoming an everyday reality. Our country, number 13 in forest cover, the inception of the Amazon jungle, experienced during the first half of this year El Niño phenomena, more than 6,000 wildfires, affecting more than 200,000 hectares of forest, and numerous communities were recorded. So far in this second half, we are facing the effects of the excessive increase in rainfall, which today has almost 600 municipalities, more than half of our country, in all the different regions, on alert for landslides. Chocó is one of the most affected ones, so our government will allocate $3 million for risk reduction works in this county and $1 million in collective investment funds. We see this space as the natural place where these problems are addressed and the UNFCCC shall deliver. But we, as developing countries, are always grappling with the dilemma of continuing our own development pathways or attending to the humanitarian crisis triggered by the impact of climate change, biodiversity loss, and land degradation. We have not caused this, but we are sure that the only way forward is together. Regarding the MWP, we deeply regret the lack of progress presented on this item. We are extremely concerned about this issue and hope that along with a robust and ambitious outcome in terms of the NCQG, there is a corresponding need to strengthen, scale, and accelerate the urgent measures that we must take individually and collectively to avoid the tipping points signaled by the best available science. We truly hope that in a balanced manner, we can reflect on the urgency of providing finance as an enabler of climate ambition in the different decisions to be taken at this COP next week. For us, it is unacceptable. We strongly reject to apply Rule 16 on this agenda item. This will impact the whole of the process and undermine the credibility and reputation of the climate regime. We still believe that it's possible to address this issue next week and take into account the interest of all the parties in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Colombia, on behalf of ILAC, Chile.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chile would like to complement the intervention made by Peru on behalf of ILAC. The Mitigation Work Program is a critical instrument to scale up action in this critical decade. It is the only space in the process that addresses in a concrete manner this key component to achieve the long-term goals of the Paris Agreement. For that reason, it's important that this program has to be able to deliver its full potential. It is clear that this process is not intended to impose obligations on any party or establish new targets. In this context, we call to move away from this atmosphere of mistrust that has characterized our discussion in this agenda item. Throughout the sessions, parties have engaged in discussions sharing a range of diverse views on substantive issues. We believe that Rule 16 does not accurately represent the nature of those discussions. In line with United Kingdom and other previous interventions, we are in favor of adopting procedural conclusions, and we support continuing the deliberation during the next week. Chile expressed its willingness to engage in a constructive manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chile. Cook Islands.
Thank you, Chair. The Cook Islands aligns itself with the statement delivered by Samoa on behalf of AOSIS. We share the urgent call for this COP to deliver substantive progress on the mitigation work program. We echo the view that the procedural conclusions as proposed by the UK offer a constructive pathway forward to ensure we leave Baku with a meaningful outcome on mitigation. This COP must not be a missed opportunity. The Cook Islands strongly supports AOSIS' call for a decision on the MWP that reflects the urgency and ambition required to keep the 1.5 goal within reach. Let us ensure Baku is remembered as a COP where we collectively raise the bar on climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Cook Islands. Nepal.
Nepal. Nepal. Oh, one down there. Thank you, Chair. Nepal aligns with the statement delivered by Malawi on behalf of LDC Group. Chair, we came here with high hopes to make substantive progress on the agenda that will guide us in limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Throughout this session, we have repeatedly highlighted the devastating climate-induced disaster and its impacts that Nepal experienced last month. We agree with the many who have suggested that a procedural conclusion is needed to advance the work next week. We also believe that many of the concerns raised in this room can be taken on board when we take this agenda item under CMA next week. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nepal. Fiji.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be extremely brief in the interest of time. Fiji strongly supports the UK proposal and also the comments of IOCs, ILAC, Australia, EU, and others. We echo that Rule 16 does not represent the discussions on this agenda item to date, nor the progress made this week. Mitigation is essential for Fiji and all the small island developing states. We do not have to continuously come into these spaces to share the everyday realities of our people due to the limited mitigation efforts. Further discussion is essential, and we urge parties to engage constructively. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fiji. India.
Thank you, co-chairs. We align with the views expressed by LMDC, the Arab Group, and the AGM. We are very concerned about the progress we have made during the last week. We have seen no progress in matters that are critical for developing countries. Our part of the world is facing some of the worst impacts of climate change with far lower capacity to recover from those impacts or to adapt to the changes to the climatic system for which we are not responsible. Chairs, we notice a tendency to ignore the decisions taken in the past, those related to the Sharm el-Sheikh Mitigation Ambition and Implementation Work Program at COP27, and also the context of the global stocktake in the Paris Agreement, where it informs the parties for undertaking climate actions. Just to reiterate, the mitigation work program that was established has a specific mandate that it shall be operationalized through focused exchange of views, information, and ideas, noting that the outcomes of the work program will be non-prescriptive, non-punitive, facilitative, respectful of national sovereignty and national circumstances, take into account the nationally determined nature of nationally determined contributions, and will not impose any new targets or goals. Those with the highest capacity to take climate action have continuously shifted goalposts, delayed climate action, and consumed a highly disproportionate share of the global carbon budget. We now have to meet our developmental needs in a situation of increasingly depleting carbon budget and increasing impacts of climate change. we are being asked to increase mitigation ambition by those who have shown no such ambition, either in their own mitigation ambition and implementation, nor in providing the means of implementation. The bottom-up approach is being attempted to be made into a top-down approach, in turn attempting to turn the whole mandate of the MWP and the principles of Paris Agreement upside down. For the past week, in the Finance COP, we have been frustrated by an unwillingness to engage on this issue by developed country partners. If there are no means of implementation, there can be no climate action. How can we discuss climate action when it is being made impossible for us to act, even as our challenges in dealing with impacts of climate change are increasing? Thank you, co-chairs.
Thank you, India. Brazil.
Thank you, co-chair. I speak in name of Group Sur of the following countries: Brazil, Ecuador, Paraguay, and Uruguay. We have engaged constructively in the discussions of the mitigation work program. We even made a substantive proposal because we think we need a new approach to this group. It has to be focused on implementation. It's a long time due to this to happen. It has to signify a safe space to countries to bring forward their mitigation efforts. And we really think it should stress as a space for facilitate implementation. In this regard, we favor that we continue to discuss with no base tax, but in terms that parties feel safer to debate this important matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Mexico.
Thank you, Chair. Mexico will align itself with the EIG and support the proposal made by the UK. Science telling us that we are not doing enough. Extreme weather events and in all over the world, it's the proof that we are not doing enough. We are not talking about the new goals. We are talking about to fulfill the Paris Agreement goals. So we would like to continue discussion the MWP under the CMA agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. I see no other requests for the floor. Colleagues, we have heard the views, and there does not appear to be consensus on the proposal put forward by the UK. And as the consideration has not been concluded, it will have to be included in the agenda of the next session in accordance with Rule 16. Iran.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In spite of being late and many colleagues are very much tired, but that would be a pity if we do not echo our support to the statements by Bolivia on behalf of LMDC, as well as the Arab group by Saudi Arabia and also the African group. Since the beginning of this round of negotiations, my country, similar to other partners, we express our sincere support to sincere negotiations, and we did our best to express and to submit our inputs for improving the text and also for preparation of an acceptable document, of a non-paper, which we could work on. In various parts of the negotiations, we have expressed our seriousness and also expression for engagement in the dialogues. And we expressed that any document which we wish to be submitted should consider not just all of the elements based on the mandates that we have, but also include all of the suggestions by all member states in an equal manner, in a transparent manner, and also in an inclusive manner. What we have seen in the text is just the selectivity of some of the ideas. Even if a simple man, could consider the current text with what we have adopted at the end of the COP28, one could easily understand that there is a huge gap based on the selectivity approach and that ambiguity which exists, across various parts of the non-paper. We can conclude that this text could not be a balanced one. And we have insisted that we want to have an unbiased text to pave the way for concluding our negotiations. That's why we fully support the consideration of Rule 16 for not continuing such discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Iran. We now invite parties to turn to Subsidiary Agenda Item 8 and SBI Agenda Item 8, United Arab Emirates Just Transition Work Programme. We thank Georg Bosting of Norway and Kishan Kumar Singh from the Trinidad and Tobago for their work in co-chairing the contact group convened on this item. Based on the agreement by parties at these consultations, I propose that to the SBI the following conclusions. Switzerland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to speak to the previous agenda item that you have just concluded. We have heard in previous discussion a large number of parties expressing interest to continue working on this topic. We have also heard different views how we can make best use of this mitigation work program to use it. We have heard many calls that we need this outcome of mitigation ambition to support mitigation efforts and to facilitate mitigation efforts. We count on the presidency for next week that we can address those issues on the agenda item CMA 6, that they will support, that we can work like multilateralism is suggesting in a space where listening to each other, working together, emerging joint ideas, that we can make best use of this agenda item to support each other in our efforts to strengthen mitigation and to combat climate change. Thank you.
Is it the UK because it is coming to me as UAE. Please, UK, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, still the UK. We are really very heartened to have heard the support for discussions under the mitigation work programme expressed by those in the room here tonight. We are disappointed with Rule 16 being applied to the mitigation work programme under the SBs at this session, when we believe that discussions were making progress, and given the importance we see of making progress on mitigation at this COP, we look forward to taking up discussions on this item under the CMA next week. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. We are extremely disappointed that we go to the CMA on a blank page on mitigation. Despite multiple attempts to foster trust and address concerns of all parties, we are worse off than last year at this time. The Mitigation Work Programme is the mandated vehicle to help deliver on mitigation in this critical decade, including what was agreed in Dubai. It must be possible to capture findings from the Mitigation Work Programme and how they address the global efforts. Some of the necessary elements of the overall mitigation outcome at this COP would include reconfirming what we agreed in the GST and send high-level political messages to facilitate its implementation, through expanding grids and storage, to phase out fossil fuel subsidies that do not address energy poverty or just transition as soon as possible, to phase out global unabated coal power generation in energy systems consistent with keeping the 1.5-degree temperature goal, and to prepare an annual report on the implementation of the GST for consideration by the CMA. Additionally, we need to ensure that we are doing everything possible within this process to bring forward most ambitious NDCs until COP30. We expect and urge the COP29 presidency to listen to all parties and allow us to continue working. A successful result of the Baku COP needs to achieve an ambitious and balanced outcome, including substantial progress on mitigation. I thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Let us now revert to Subsidiary Agenda Item 8 and SBI Agenda Item 8, United Arab Emirates Just Transition Work Programme. The Subsidiary and the SBI, I propose the following SBI conclusions. The Subsidiary and SBI did not conclude their consideration relating to the implementation of the United Arab Emirates Just Transition Work Programme. The Subsidiary and the SBI agreed to forward this matter to the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement at its 6th session for further consideration. Can I take it that the SBI agrees to these conclusions? Having no objections, it is so decided.
Can I take it that the Subsidiary agrees to this conclusion? Hearing no objections, I see, Brazil, you're asking for the floor. You asked for the floor before I gather. You have the floor, Brazil.
Thank you. Yes, I asked for the floor before the SBI gathered. The Just Transition Work Program, we really think we should be continue to work on it. We are not in agreement that this should be postponed, and we would like to continue to work next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I see no other party, so I would like to continue. Can I take it that the Subsidiary agrees to this conclusion? Hearing no objections, so decided.
We now invite parties to Subsidiary Agenda Item 10, Sharm el-Sheikh Joint Work on Implementation of Climate Action on Agriculture and Food Security. It's SBI Agenda Item 10 as well. We thank Una May Gordon from Belize and Claudia Heideck from Germany for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SB/2024/L8. Can I take it that the SBI adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Can I take it that the Subsidiary adopt the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, this is so decided. We now invite parties to turn to SBSTA agenda item 11 and SBI agenda item 14A, matters related to technology development and transfer, joint annual report of the Technology Executive Committee and the Climate Technology Center and Network. We thank Carlos Fuller from Belize and Elfriede Moore from Austria for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this item. We invite delegates to consider the 2 draft decisions that the SBSTA and the SBI recommend under this item. The draft COP decision contained in document SB/2024/L11 and the draft CMA decision contained in document SB/2024/L10. Can I take it that the SBSTA recommends the draft COP decision for consideration and adoption by the COP as presented, and recommends that the draft CMA decision for consideration and adoption by the CMA as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
May I take it that the SBI also recommends the draft COP decision for consideration and adoption by the COP as presented, and recommends the draft CMA decision for consideration and adoption by the CMA as presented? Having no objections, it is so decided.
We now invite parties to turn to SBSTA agenda item 9 and SBI agenda 9, matters related to the Forum on Impact of the Implementation of Response Measures serving the Convention, the Kyoto Protocol, and the Paris Agreement. We thank Kusani Gwalanda from Botswana and Magnus Sigurdsson from Iceland for their work in co-chairing the contact group convened on this item. Based on agreement by parties on these consultations, I propose to the SBSTA the following conclusions. The SBSTA and the SBI did not conclude their consideration of the matters related to the Forum on the Impact of the Implementation of Response Measures serving the Convention, the Kyoto Protocol, and the Paris Agreement. The SBSTA and the SBI agreed to forward the matter to the COP at its 29th session, and the CMP at its 19th session, and the CMA at its 6th session for further guidance, taking into account the draft text available at the UNFCCC website on this agenda item, noting that the draft text being forwarded doesn't represent consensus among parties. Can I take it that the SBSTA agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Can I take it that the SBI agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Dear delegates, as the first of these SBSTA-only agenda items, I invite parties to turn to SBSTA agenda item 4, research and systematic observation. I thank the co-facilitators, Frank McGovern from Ireland and Patricia Nyongoro from Kenya, for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations under this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SBSTA/2024/L17. Can I take it that the SBSTA adopt these conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to SBSTA agenda item 12, matters related to the operation of the Clean Development Mechanism. I thank the co-facilitators, Carolina Antonen from Finland and Alec Muvudinka from Zambia, for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations on these items. The co-facilitators have informed me that the parties have considered this matter, but that they could not conclude their consideration on this session. The item will therefore be included in a provisional agenda for the next session in accordance with Rule 10C and 16 of the draft rules of procedures. I invite parties to turn to sub-agenda item 13, matters related to Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Sub-item A, guidance on cooperative approaches referred to in Article 6, paragraph 2 of the Paris Agreement and in Decision 2, CMA 3. I thank the co-facilitators, Maria Aishi from Saudi Arabia and Pia Stiensen from Norway, for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations under these items. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SubSTA/2024/14. Can I take it that the SubSTA adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to sub-item 13B, rules, modalities, and procedures for the mechanism established by Article 6, paragraph 4 of the Paris Agreement and referred to in Decision 3, CMA 3. I thank the co-facilitators Kate Hancock from Australia and Sonam Tashi from Bhutan for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations on these items. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SubSTA/2024/L16. Can I take it that the SubSTA adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties now to turn to sub-item 13C, work program under the framework for non-market approaches referred to in Article 6, paragraph 8 of the Paris Agreement and in Decision 4, CMA 3. Under this item, the 6th meeting of the Glasgow Committee on Non-Market Approaches was convened at this session, operating as per the procedures of the contact group. I thank the co-chairs Christine Kwee from Samoa and Jackie Wookska from New Zealand for co-facilitating the work under this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in SubSTA/24/L15 and the draft decision contained in document SubSTA/2024/L15 at 1. May I take it that the SubSTA adopts the conclusions as presented and that it recommends the draft CMA decision for consideration and adoption by the CMA as presented? I see Japan. Japan, you have the floor.
Chair, my comments will be on A and B, so I can state after your vote.
Thank you, Japan. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I now give the floor to Japan. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Our comment is on sub-item A and B. So Japan appreciates all the hard work that parties have provided with constructive spirit that moves ourselves forward throughout this week. Japan supports the adoption of the text for further consideration at CMA, recognizing that there was no consensus in the current version of the text, either Article 6.2 and 6.4. Both draft texts were substantially streamlined from the earlier version of text, which allows parties to focus on topics that requires further discussion. We feel that both drafts still have remaining issues where parties' views are not reflected In the next iteration, we hope that all the parties' views are reflected in a more balanced manner that brings all of us together. The outcome of this year should include establishment of connection between registries to enable enhanced transparency to avoid double counting to ensure environmental integrity. Japan remains committed to work together towards our successful outcome of Article 6 in this COP and CMA, and looks forward to engaging constructively with all the parties. I thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I invite parties now to turn to SBSTA agenda item 14, methodological issues, sub-item A, greenhouse gas data interface. I thank the co-facilitators Frederick Uma from Kenya and Daniela Romano from Italy for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations under this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SBSTA/2024/L11. Can I take it that the SBSTA adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to agenda item 14B, emissions from fuel used for international aviation and maritime transport. I thank the co-facilitators, Patricia Ashin Ugola from Kenya and Jakob Weisbauer-Lenz from the European Union for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations under this item. Based on agreement by parties at these consultations, I propose to SBSTA the following conclusions. The subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice continues consideration of this agenda item. The SBSTA agreed to continue consideration of this matter at SBSTA 62, June 25. Can I take it that the SBSTA agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to agenda sub-item 14C, reporting tools under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. I thank the co-facilitators Frederick Uma from Kenya and Daniela Romano from Italy for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations under this item. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusions on this item contained in document SBSTA/2024/12. Can I take it that the SBSTA adopts the conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to SBSTA agenda item 15, annual reports and technical review. I thank Ole Kellen Nielsen from Denmark and Marcelo Rocha from Brazil for their work in co-facilitating the informal consultations convened on this matter. For SBSTA sub-item 15A, technical review of information reported under the Convention by parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention in their biannual reports and national communication. Based on agreement among parties at the informal consultation, I propose the following conclusions. The subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice considered the 2024 report on a technical review of information reported under the Convention by parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention in their biannual reports and national communication contained in document FCC/SBSTA/2024/IM5 and took note of the information therein. Can I take it that the SBSTA agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objection, it is so decided. For sub-item 15B, technical review of greenhouse gas inventories of parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Based on agreement among parties at these consultations, I propose the following conclusion. the subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice considered the 2024 report on a technical review of greenhouse gas inventories of parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention, contained in document FCC/SBSTA/2024/INF2, and took note of the information therein. Can I take it that the SBSTA agrees to these conclusions? Hearing no objection, it is so decided. For sub-item 15C, technical review of greenhouse gas inventories and other information reported by parties included in Annex 1. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusion on this item contained in document SBSTA/2024/L10. Can I take it that the SBSTA adopts the conclusions as presented? Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it has taken some couple of minutes since I raised my flag, and I think it wasn't transmitted to the podium, but it was on 14C, the tools on transparency reporting, 14C. If you may allow me, I'll go back to that. I wanted to, on behalf of the ODCs, register that we are disappointed by the lack of progress on the items related to support for reporting and capacity building for developing countries. Chair, 20 least developed countries out of the 45 have already initiated the process of preparing their biannual transparency reports. However, achieving full and effective implementation of the enhanced transparency framework requires a continued and timely technical and financial support. There's still an opportunity for us to adopt a stronger decision that supports developing countries in implementing the Paris Agreement. And we urge parties, therefore, to engage constructively to achieve this goal. We hope we can do better in this particular agenda item when we meet again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malawi. Let me return to sub-item 15C, the technical reviews of greenhouse gas inventories and other information reported by parties included in the Annex 1. I invite delegates to consider the draft conclusion on this item contained in document SBSTA/2024/L10. Can I take it that the SBSTA adopts these conclusions as presented? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Dear delegates, we have considered and adopted all conclusions under SBSTA. At this point, let me hand back to the SBI chair.
Thank you, Harry. Now, let me invite parties to return to SBI agenda item 14B, matters relating to technology transfer and development. I would like to seek clarification from Malawi on this issue. They had requested that they wanted to consult. Malawi?
Thank you very much, Chair. As you may have noted, I think there is a series and an overlap of the agenda items regarding technology. I think there are 3 of them. And the sequencing items poses some challenge. But I want to specifically just come back to my earlier intervention, and particularly on 14A. 14A, that's the joint annual report of the Technology Executive Committee and the Climate Technology Center Network. Chair, we want to appreciate, of course, the co-facilitators' efforts in managing this particular agenda item. And for this particular agenda item 14A, we acknowledge the progress that has been made at this session. We want to agree with the procedural conclusions that we have adopted and have been taken forward to the draft decision. However, we would like to register still our concern that not all our views have been reflected on the draft decision, and would like to get back on this agenda item under the CMA when we meet next week. Regarding 14B, the linkages between the technology mechanism and the financial mechanism, we do agree with the draft conclusion as it has been taken under 14B. Thank you, chairs.
Thank you, Malawi. Your concern is duly noted, and as 14B was already gavelled, so we move on. Dear delegates, with this, we have taken up all items on our agendas and adopted the work resulting from this session. I would like now to invite the UNFCCC Deputy Executive Secretary, Nora Hamladji, to provide information on the financial implications of the agreed work at this session.
Thank you, Chair. Activities negotiated at this session of the SBSTA call for more support by the Secretariat and require additional resources over and above requirements recently stated in the update of the work program for the biennium 2024-2025. Under SBSTA Agenda Item 13C, matters relating to Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, work program under the framework for non-market approaches referred to in Article 6, Paragraph 8 of the Paris Agreement, an amount of 57,000 euros will be required in 2025. Under SBSTA Agenda Item 14C, methodological issues under the Convention, reporting tools under the Enhanced Transparency Framework, an amount of 2.2 million euros will be required in 2025. The cost of the output to be delivered in 2025 in response to a request made under SBSTA Agenda Item 4, Research and Systematic Observation, will be absorbed within available resources under the core budget. The costs are estimated to be 30,000 euros. Requested activities under the aforementioned item are temporary or short-term in nature. All estimated amounts are preliminary and based on information currently available. The Secretariat counts on the parties to provide supplementary funding for these activities in a timely and predictable manner, as without such contribution, the Secretariat will not be in a position to provide the mandated support in a timely manner. Costs for 2026-2027 will be reviewed in the context of the budget preparation for 2026-2027. Conclusions adopted by SBI61 do not contain requests for additional activities to be undertaken by the Secretariat. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nora. We now move to the last items on our SBI and SBSTA agendas, closure of the report on the session, beginning with the SBSTA, followed by SBI.
I invite parties to turn to SBSTA Agenda Item 17, closure of and a report of the session. I now would like to invite the rapporteur to present the draft report on the session contained in document F.C/SBSTA/2024/L13. Sita, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the pleasure to introduce to you the draft report on the 16th session of the SBSTA contained in document F.C/SBSTA/2024/L13. As per the standard practice, the report is mostly procedural. Substantive and procedural conclusions adopted by the SBSTA on its relevant agenda items will be inserted into the final version of the report. Mr. Chair, I recommend that you propose a draft report containing document FCCC/SubSTA/2024/L13 to the SubSTA for adoption. May I also take this opportunity to thank you, Mr. Chair, as you conclude your tenure as the SubSTA Chair. It has been a great honor to work with you in the SubSTA Bureau. Thank you for your great leadership, trust, and support to me in my role as the rapporteur. This concludes my brief report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the rapporteur for her work. I also thank you for your support in the time of my role as SubSTA Chair. Delegates, I propose that the SubSTA authorize the rapporteur, with the assistance of the Secretariat and under the guidance of the Chair of the SubSTA, to complete the report on the session and to make available to all parties. I invite the SubSTA to adopt the draft report of the 61st session as contained in document FCCC/SubSTA/2024/L13. Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
I now invite parties to turn to SBI Agenda Item 22, Closure of and Report on the Session. I would now like to invite the rapporteur to present the draft report on the session contained in document FCCC/SBI/2024/L15. Aysen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the pleasure to introduce to you the draft report on the 61st session of the SBI, which is contained in document FCCC/SBI/2024/L15. As usual, the report is procedural. Substantive and procedural conclusions adopted by the SBI on its relevant agenda items will be inserted into the final version of the report. Mr. Chair, I recommend that you propose a draft report contained in document FCCC/SBI/2024/L15 to the SBI for adoption. This concludes my brief report. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the rapporteur for her report and for her work and her support over the past 2 years. I propose that the SBI authorizes the rapporteur, with the assistance of the Secretariat and under guidance of the SBI Chair, to complete the report on the session and to make it available to all parties. I invite the SBI to adopt the draft report on its 61st session as contained in document FCCC/SBI/2024/L15. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Since this is our last plenary as chairs, allow me to make a few personal comments. And I assure you that it is it is midnight, so I will be very short. Our climate crisis, my friends, is not abstract. It is here, it is urgent, and it is personal. We all know that we have the science, the tools, and the ability to address this crisis. It is our actions that can still rekindle hope among millions. COP29 is our chance, maybe the last chance, to plant the seeds of change. Each decision we commit to and each commitment we uphold can help us bring closer to meeting the goals we set for ourselves in Paris, and support is very much part of that package. So, as we enter the second week of COP29, my request to you, as the outgoing chair of SBI, is talk to each other, work together, make that compromise, cross that arbitrary red line, find common ground. Only through the spirit of collaboration and trust can we chart the course for a cooler, safer future. This is our commitment, and this is our moment to act in solidarity for ourselves, for our future generations, and for our planet. And I wish you to end by thanking you for all the trust that you have posed in me and for your unmitigated support over the past 2 years. My deepest gratitude also to my dear friend Harry. I think, if anything, we showed that the North and the South can work together. All you need is to trust each other. Thank you. Thank you.
Dear friends, like SBI, we also draw this session of SubStat to a close. And for myself, it is with deep sense of gratitude, reflection, and optimism that I address you for the final time as the chair of the SubStat. Over the past 2 years, I have the honor of serving in this role during a period of immense global change, challenges, and opportunities. Together, we have addressed complex issues, advanced the implementation of the Paris Agreement, and strengthened the scientific and technological foundation of our collective climate response. I am proud, and I hope you are also proud, on the progress we have made together. We have worked tirelessly to operationalize the key aspects of Article 6, unlocking pathways for cooperation that will enhance ambition and support sustainable development. We have advanced critical dialogues on just transition, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, recognition the urgency to address impact and build resilience. These achievements are not mine. They are the result of tireless efforts of us all, supported by the Secretariat and driven by the unwavering commitment of you, delegates, experts, and also non-party stakeholders. I would thank the SubStat Bureau for their support in the last 2 years. Together, you have enabled me to fulfill my mandate as chair. And to the Secretariat team, your professionalism, guidance, and support have been invaluable in managing the complexities of our work. And I extend my serious appreciation to each of you for making my tenure as SubStat chair both productive and rewarding. It would not be good if I not take a moment to express my deepest appreciation to my colleague that was unknown to me before I started this work, but soon he became a friend. Ambassador Nabil Munir, the chair of SBI. Nabil has been a steadfast partner, a great team player, and a true champion of collaboration. His diplomacy and tireless efforts have been critical in addressing joint issues between our subsidiary bodies, ensuring that together we deliver coherent and impactful outcomes. Working not only alongside him, but working together and in very close cooperation, it is one of the great privileges of my tenure, and I will always treasure the partnership we have shared. To conclude this chapter of my life, I'm deeply aware that the road ahead is both challenging and hopeful. The urgency of the climate crisis demands, as also Nabil indicated, that we continue to move forward with ambition, collaboration, and unwavering resolve. I'm confident that through collective leadership, dedication, and strong partnership, we all overcome these challenges and continue to achieve meaningful progress. Finally, I wish to share my gratitude to all of you. This journey has not only been a professional responsibility, but also a deeply personal commitment. I leave this role with a profound respect for the spirit of mutualism and a firm belief in our collectively ability to deliver the transformative change of our planet that we all desperately need. Thank you, and I wish you every success in the future. Thank you very much for this warm applause. I would now like to give the floor to the UNFCCC Executive Secretary, Simon Steele. Simon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Harry. Colleagues, it is late in the evening, but I must express my profound thanks to the chairs of SubsidiaryBodiesSBSTA and SBI, Harry and Nabil. Over the past 2 years, your tireless efforts and exceptional leadership have been instrumental in guiding the work under your respective bodies. You have navigated complex negotiations with wisdom and provided invaluable support to numerous co-facilitators and to parties. Your dedication has advanced our agenda and fostered collaboration and trust among parties. For this, we are deeply, deeply grateful. It was also a pleasure to see your professional relationship evolve into what is a beautiful friendship. So as we look ahead to next week, I urge parties to work collaboratively to find solutions to the remaining contentious issues. Some issues require more work than others, and I hope that these can be finalized early next week, leaving the second half of the week for the more complex issues. I wish you all an enjoyable Sunday, and Sunday has already started. So please, relax and take some time for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, and also for the warm words towards Nabil and me. I see that Australia requested for the floor. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairs. On behalf of the Umbrella Group, I just wish to take this opportunity to recognize you, Harry and Nabil, for your hard work and your collegiate approach as our SB chairs for the last 2 years. Your personal dedication has advanced us significantly, and we thank you both.
It seems the sound was not working on this side, but we heard it over the system. We thank you very much for your warm words. I now give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the DHI, I would like to thank you and Nabil for your hard work over the time. I think how the two of you have collaborated together was really special. I think you have shown that teamwork is possible, that working together is possible in this space. I would also like to thank you for your dedication, for your presence, for your listening, and your commitment for this process. So thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you, Switzerland. Next is the European Union.
Thank you, Harry and Nabil, chairs, for your hard work and dedication throughout the past 2 years. It was a pleasure having you in the European Union coordinations and having discussions with you to enhance ambition and climate action. Thanks for your dedication.
Thank you. Next, United Arab Emirates.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and let me join others in thanking you, Ambassador Nabil and Harry, for your partnership, for your collaboration, for your friendship, and for all your extensive hard work over these 2 years. It was a true pleasure as the COP28 presidency to work with you, whether it's in encouraging you to get the majority of technical work done in the first week always, or working with you on the first ever high-level committee for the GST. It was a true pleasure. I think we've done great work together, and we thank you for how far you've brought us in this session, and look forward to working with all parties for a successful conclusion that you can also be proud of. Once again, thank you both, and congratulations.
Thank you. Next on the list is Saudi Arabia.
Ambassador Nabil and Harry, what a pleasure and what a journey that we had in the last 2 years. We really worked together throughout all the obstacles, all the challenges. You were a true friend to not only to the parties, but also to all of our subgroups. You have delivered a lot of accomplishments. We have witnessed a lot of success stories with your leadership. And with that, we really, really thank you for all of your efforts and your leadership. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next is Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of Africa, let me join others to thank you and congratulate you, Ambassador Nabil and Harry, for the hard work and dedication and commitment to the process over the last 2 years. We all enjoyed working with you, and we wish you well as you conclude your assignment here. Thank you very much, and best of luck.
I now give the floor to Malawi.
Thank you very much also, our two chairs. And on behalf of the group of the Least Developed Countries, I also want to congratulate you, the two of you, for working hard for us as well as a group. In the course of the year, you used to approach me and consult on various agenda items, those that were at the head of the ODCs. We worked together, we collaborated, and you also advanced those areas that are at our heads as ODCs, and we have seen some good results in the 2 years that you have been on the chairs, and we want to thank you again and also wish you well in your future endeavors. We are very also appreciative again of your efforts even here in Baku until this time, this morning of Sunday. Thank you very much. Wish you well. Thank you.
Next, I give the floor to Samoa.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Alliance of Small Island States, we would like to thank you, both co-chairs, both SP's chairs, for your guidance and dedication you have maintained during your tenure in the last 2 years. We've also, as a group, enjoyed having you both in our coordination work, and you have contributed a lot to the process. The Alliance of Small Island States, thank you and wish you well. Thank you.
I now give the floor to Peru.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of ILAC. We want to adhere to the interventions made with all other colleagues. We want to extend our sincere gratitude to the Board of Chairs for their exceptional leadership and tireless effort. Their guidance and expertise have been invaluable in advancing in the global climate agenda. The dedication and commitment demonstrated by the board chairs have been instrumental in achieving significant progress. We really thank you.
I now give the floor to Bolivia.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the LMDC, we join others thanking all of you, Nabil, Harry. We appreciate very much your hard work, your leadership, and always your positive and constructive approach to move forward all the issues and to help all the groups and parties to navigate in this complicated process, but with your good spirit, we were able to really move forward this process. Thank you very much, our sincere gratitude, and we wish you all the best.
I now give the floor to Venezuela.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I also want to join my colleagues saying thank you to Harry and Nabil for your guidance, leadership, and especially patience, because it's not easy sometimes to deal with all the different positions and all the different views. So you make an exceptional work, and in the name of ALBA, we want to really thank you and wish you all the best. Thank you.
I now turn to Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to express also our group, Brazil, Ecuador, Paraguay, and Uruguay, our gratitude for your work, your excellent guidance when we needed guidance, your patience, your engagement with parties, and your dedication to the cause of climate change. We wish you well and a good rest, but we'd like to see you next week to help us to get through.
I now give the floor to Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and please allow me to join all the colleagues in thanking you for your guidance and your impartiality throughout this process, and also to congratulate you on this enjoyable yet challenging journey, and wish you all the best in all your endeavors. Thank you very much.
And now I give the floor to China.
Thank you, Mr. Chairs, and we will also speak, China is speaking on behalf of the basic group, and we would also like to join the other colleagues to express our sincere gratitude for your able guidance, for your patience, for your leadership, for your guidance in the previous journey, and we wish you all the best and wish you have a happy weekend. Thank you very much.
I thank you all for your nice word. And now hand over to Nabil.
With this, SubSTA Chair and I would like to turn to the closure of the meeting. The meeting, and with it, the 61st session of the SBI is hereby closed.
This meeting, and with the 61st session of the SubSTA, is hereby closed.